morning. My name is Mukesh Malhotra. I'm the Rotary International Community Service Chairman for the United Kingdom and Ireland for 2015-16. Today is World Polio Day, and many of us who are from the South Asian area will be aware of how important polio is and the elimination of polio. Last year, we were lucky enough to see polio being got rid of in India, and that was in April 2014. And this year, just 2 weeks ago, Nigeria was declared polio free, which has meant that Africa is now polio free. In the United Kingdom, we haven't seen polio since the early 70s. And if you think back when polio was endemic everywhere, there were 350,000 cases being reported on an annual basis. Now we have a situation, just last year there were just 51 cases of polio reported, and they were reported in Pakistan and Afghanistan, which happen to be the last two endemic countries where we have polio. My role today is to highlight some of the work which Rotary International, UNICEF, the CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control, the World Health Organization, as well as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have done over the recent years. But to do any of this work needs human beings and people. And that's one of the stories which I want to share with you today. On the 24th of October was declared by the United Nations and by Rotary International as being the day to recognize polio. And today around the world, people are celebrating the hard work which has been actually committed by Rotarians and the people, whether they're young or they're old. They're out there celebrating the fact that we've got to the stage of only having 2 countries left in the world which have endemic polio. And can you imagine growing up all those years ago when there wasn't the vaccine or the immunization program?
Polio jungle.
I know for myself, I went to India and I didn't really appreciate how much effort it takes. And when I went there, I took part in an immunization program, and I'm very proud to say that I immunized 127 children. I don't know who those 127 children are, and because we've been able to immunize them against polio, they're probably alive and kicking and enjoying themselves, which other children might not have been able to. So for myself, I'm so pleased that I've been able to do that. But however, the other message I got was that on that particular day in India when I went, over 250,000 children were immunized. Can you imagine the population of one of the London boroughs being immunized completely in one? Now, let's tell you the story of how the program started. Back in 1979, a program was committed in the Philippines, which happened to be the largest location where polio was endemic. That project enabled polio program, global program, to start in 1985, and that was a commitment by the United Nations and Rotary International. What that's enabled is that throughout the world we've been able to eliminate polio on a daily basis. Can you imagine that today, as I talk, we have only had 51 cases reported in the past year? To be able to do that, we've had volunteers who have actually been at bus stations, have gone to villages, gone to train stations, and also many of us will think that, how do you do this? Well, one of the campaigns that took place was something called the Purple Pinky. So whenever you went to actually give the immunization, the child's little finger over here would be colored in purple endemic ink. Now that would stay on that child's finger for 6 weeks. That way, whenever they had to go do the next round of immunizations, the children were able to receive their dosages, and we knew who had received it. Now, it's really important to understand that if you're in rural parts of the world, who actually delivers the babies? We don't have doctors necessarily, but we will have lay midwives. And I had the fortunate reason that when I was in India, I worked with 2 grandmothers. And what did they do on that day? They went round and they gathered all the children and they brought them to us. And we were able to give them the life-saving vaccine. And it's made their lives possible. And I'm sure that those children who have received it from so many of my colleagues around the world, it would have made a difference to their lives. Now, the question most people ask is, why polio and why not something else? Many of you will remember the bad old days when we had smallpox in the world. And that was the first illness which was eradicated by us as human beings. We're now at that stage, at the real crux point where if we can eliminate polio, it'll be the second eradicated disease from this world. The challenge we all face though is that polio still exists in areas of conflict. And everyone says, well, you haven't got rid of it. The problem is it's carried. And what we tend to find is that in places like Afghanistan and Pakistan, individuals may carry that to areas of conflict. And recently we had the situation where polio broke out in parts of Syria and Lebanon. The countries and the government, the UNICEF organization, then did a mass immunization so as to actually stop that happening. So it's really important that if we don't immunize, polio will come back, and that dreadful illness, which many of us have seen in our lifetimes, will actually impact the children of the world. And we all made a promise that this would be eliminated, and I'm hopeful that within the next few years we'll be able to do that. And what I wanted to be able to share with you today is a little story about myself and my friend Suzanne Ray. She's a Rotarian in the Rotary Club of Cairns in Australia, and I'm a Rotarian here in the Rotary Club of Hounslow. We happened to meet about just under 2 years ago, and we wanted to make a project which was so simple that neither of us actually believed that it would be possible. That project is now up and running, and it's been running for just over 21 months. We didn't have any meetings, formal meetings, we didn't have any minutes, we did it over the internet, and we shared our little aspiration or our hope with our friends around the world. And that project's called Rotary's World's Greatest Meal. That project today has grown to have saved over 7.1 million children. So when anybody says, what did you do in your life? I can say, well, I inspired all of my friends and colleagues around the world to actually help save 7.1 million children. And you think, how did we do that? Well, we were lucky enough that one of the partners in our project was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. What they promised Rotary is that for every dollar we raised, we would get another $2. So if you can imagine how much of an influence that has made, and the fact that the idea was that we could actually just have one of the most common things that Rotarians do is they like to drink tea or coffee, or they like to have a sandwich or have a meal. So we say to everybody, why don't you have a simple event? You can forego a meal and give the difference. You could have a barbecue and invite your friends. And all that little bit of money has added up. And today we now have over 80,000 people have taken part in this project around the world.
GB Talk more Pele.